forward. We might. We just might. I mean, maybe this year is the off year here for Pinellas County. I don't know. So they're going to be watching closely. She's going to be here for many more hours here still tonight watching the results come in, guys.
Josh, real quick, I want to ask you a question. Has there been any talk tonight about what exactly they believe may have led to the numbers that we're seeing right now, what it is about voters and turnout, and what exactly the candidates did as they crisscrossed the state that may have helped or hurt Joe Biden? In particular, we look at South Florida, Miami-Dade County, and so forth. Any talk about that?
Well, yes, and that is key there. They're looking at the deficit that Joe Biden was facing, particularly with Hispanic voters in South Florida. They're seeing the deficits in Miami-Dade for Democrats, and they think that, Donald Trump's messaging on Democrats would bring, socialism to the White House, that resonated with Hispanic voters, with Cuban American voters down there. I think last check going into Election Day today, Democrats were running like a 10% deficit with Hispanic voters versus Hispanic-leaning Republican voters there. And so, without those margins down there, that is certainly impacting the state overall when you've got such a slim margin in a county like Pinellas. So yes, Democrats went into today very worried about what that turnout among the Hispanic voting bloc would mean. And obviously the Hispanic voting bloc it's not a monolith. I mean, there's a lot of different factors into that bloc, and so it's really hard sometimes to pinpoint. But yeah, they feel like that the appeal from Donald Trump to Republican-leading Hispanics when it came to his messaging on socialism is what resonated and turned them out a bit more than they could for the Democrats in that area. And we'll see, and it looks like perhaps that's going to be what tilts the state in the president's favor once again.
Yeah, and that's an important point that Josh has brought out, that Hispanic, Latino voters are not a monolith, right? You've got your Cuban Americans in South Florida, you've got Puerto Ricans in Central Florida. So, not that they all vote the same.
Yeah.
So there's a target.
And I think that's important, because a couple of days ago I did a 5-part series leading up to Election Day, right? And one of the things I did was looking at why both camps were confident about Florida. And the key confidence factor for Donald Trump and the Republicans were down here in Miami-Dade County, because polls showed that Cuban American voters had favored, whether it's his hardline policies towards Cuba, what have you. The 17% of the electorate, right, in Florida was Hispanics. That's a record. Of that electorate, of that 17%, if you kind of zoom in a little bit further, Cuban Americans and Puerto Ricans are the majority.
Yeah.
And in the state, Puerto Ricans are in the center part of the state near Orlando, majority of them, and a lot of them are down here in South Florida for the Cuban Americans. One poll out of South Florida had Trump up 61% to 35% on Biden in Cuban Americans. And it looks like that could have made the difference, Carolyn. I mean, again, look, let's go back to the total Florida, 380,000 votes again. We haven't called it yet. Still, we're waiting for a couple of precincts to come in here. When we know, when AP calls it, you will know. I promise you.
We will adjust them out.
I promise you. But 380,000 votes is the difference. Our state, this is about triple what we saw 4 years ago. Triple what we saw 4 years ago. I mean, look back, 112,000 votes between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. And now it's 380,000. But I think down here in Miami-Dade County, look back 2016. I want to take you to Dade. 290,000 votes. Here in 2020, Donald Trump ate into that margin. And that is one of the reasons that he potentially has won our 29 electoral college.
Let's go ahead and chat with Lars Hafner, our political analyst, who's been with us throughout the entire night. He's been working with us to really kind of dissect and understand the information that we're getting and the votes that we're seeing right now. Why don't we go ahead and start with just that? I mean, what the tipping scale was exactly with the state of Florida. Lars.
I think what you've been talking about, the vote for the Democrats didn't come out big in Dade County. It happened to them also in the 2018 Democratic governor's race, in which they thought that was what's going to put them over for the state. If Democrats don't perform well in the 3 southern counties of Broward, Dade, and Palm Beach and hit the numbers and exceed the numbers, they have a hard time winning Florida, even when Pinellas County and Hillsborough County go Democratic, because there's enough wiggle room throughout the state in North Florida that they just begin to pile up the votes, because even though they're small numbers, they're wide margins.
Lars, certainly interesting looking at the state of Florida. And again, we're putting the numbers up here on the screen for those of you that are watching digitally. 99% of those precincts, President Trump leading 380,000 votes right now on Joe Biden. Lars, this has been a state, okay, that has been decided by 2.6 percentage points on average since 1996. We are the closest state by margin in the country. What you've seen over the last 2 years, or the last two presidential cycles, I should say, is Florida leaning more Republican. We talked about in 2018 during the midterms that potential blue wave. That didn't really resonate here in Florida. Do you see our state, Lars, becoming more of a Republican mainstay than maybe it has been in the past?
I'm not so sure that that will necessarily be true in the long haul. Florida continues to grow its population. The West Coast continues to be the Midwesterners that move down here. The East Coast is more the East Coast of the nation that come to Miami and Broward. And I think it will continue to be that, 1 to 3 point margin. But it all does depend upon the candidates. In this particular case, Trump has the ear of Floridians. He was able to get a lot of votes out of the senior citizens, especially in the villages. He was able to neutralize the Latinos in South Florida by his hard line on Cuba and calling Biden a socialist. Not every candidate's going to have that sway. So I think Florida's going to continue to be in the purple nature, but that's good for Floridians because that means we have a say in the elections. And so we're starting to see that, though, throughout the Southeast, because even though Texas did not flip this time, Texas is becoming more purple also. So when we get more competitive states, the better off we are for our democracy.
For me, real quick, I want to just quickly mention to our viewers that Amendment 3 has failed. I want to walk you through that. We just got that. That Amendment 3 has failed. That has to do with open primaries.
It's important in our state.
It's important. It's you could see there that is failed. It needed a 60% supermajority in order to pass. You see right there, 43% with no right now. So this one had to do with allowing people, regardless of party affiliation, to be able to vote in several elections, right, for governor, some congressional, in order to do that. So that has failed there, but that was one that some voters were looking for and actually wanted to see. But that would have been truly changed the landscape.
Guys, do we still, as we have the explainer, do we still have Lars with us? Because I'd like to ask him his perspective on this. If Lars, Brian, our producer, if you could let me know if Lars is still with us, because Amendment 3 could have drastically changed how we vote in the state of Florida. And I want to go out to you, Lars, for this, because Amendment 3 has failed. I'm curious if this will come up on the ballot again as far as closed primaries. Were you surprised? Because this was pretty controversial. There were some lawsuits to potentially get this pulled off the ballot in the 11th hour. But Amendment 3 has failed. Are you surprised with this result?
Not really, because we know that both parties were against it. They both have a stake in the idea that they can help nominate their own individuals out of their own party. What I do think is a little bit of a surprise is that the non-party vote didn't go more for the amendment to try to get it to the 60%, because it would have opened up the primaries, and we know that 27% of Florida registered voters are non-party affiliated, and they would have had a say in who gets the nomination, and of course they don't have that voice right now. So it's not surprising because the Democrats and the Republicans didn't want it, but it is surprising in the fact that it wasn't pushed closer. And I think in this particular race, it kind of got lost with everything that was going on in the presidential balloting. So perhaps maybe in an off year in 2022, when we just have a Senate race and not a presidential race, something may come back to the ballot, whether it's the so-called jungle primary like amendment like this one was, or whether it's just the idea of being able to open the primaries to where you can select which side of the aisle you want to vote in if you are a non-party affiliate.
Lars, thank you so much for your insight and your expertise all night tonight. I know you'll probably be standing by, of course, if and when Florida does get called. Again, just to explain the process, because we've been transparent throughout the night. The Associated Press is what we use. They go through 7,000 races tonight to call.
An incredible amount of people to make this
Unbelievable.
happen.
4,000 stringers they use across all 50 states to be able to bring you these accurate results that you're seeing here on your screen, not just for the state of Florida, but also for the Electoral College. And they're accurate. And that's the key here. We don't want to come on the air and bring you something that's inaccurate. Associated Press, which we rely on, which many outlets rely on across the country, accuracy is paramount here. And that's what we certainly are looking at here, with the reason why we haven't called the state of Florida yet, with some of those other precincts still working out. But let's take a look at this, because here's our electoral map.
Yeah. Do you want to go back to 2016? Let's look at some of the states that are in play and that, you can look at to see that it will likely go towards President Donald Trump. But again, as you look through this wave here, your eyes just go up to the top of the map, and the 3 states there, the blue wall that we've talked about. And a lot of those, white working folks in those areas who are looking for jobs, who are concerned about the economy, who are concerned about some of the manufacturing jobs, he really spoke to them. He really has spoken to them. And so it's going to be interesting to see if they feel like he has delivered on the promises that he's had for his first term as president.
The president's base has long been rural, white, working class voters. And in this year's election, his call was to get them to come out in droves. And we've seen that in Florida. I mean, we talked about historic turnout. Courtney Robinson was with us earlier. Almost 11 million people in the state of Florida cast a ballot this year. And let me say something about the president. Like him or not, he's polarizing. He brings people to the polls. We've seen this charge of people to come and cast their ballot, whether for or against the president. He has a very strong supportive base. Joe Biden, I think when you look at him versus Hillary Clinton, I think he was a little more favorable to the blue Democratic side. But when we look at 2020, let's take some scenarios here, Carolina, because again, 2016 versus what we're looking at here in 2020. Go ahead for me and give Montana to the president, right? Let's just say Iowa's a swing state, but it's leaning towards the president right now. So let's give Iowa and their 6 electoral college votes to President Donald Trump. Nevada, back in 2016, blue state. Let's give that to Joe Biden. Their 6 electoral college votes.
Ohio, it seems like
let's zero that out for a second. Go zero the Nevada out for me for a second. Let's go back to A here. All right, give Nevada blue for me if you can for Joe Biden. Alaska, longtime Republican state. Let's give that to the president. All right, Hawaii, Democratic state. Let's go and assume that Joe Biden gets that. So here's where we stand right now, right? Let's just say that some of this map is working out the way that it traditionally does work out. We're still waiting on. Here's a scenario that I find that you want to talk about close, polarizing nation. We could have a scenario. Coming into tonight, 538 predicted less than a 1% chance of this happening, but it's growing as we get closer and closer with some of these races. A 269 to 269 electoral college tie. The House has not broken up a tie since the 1800s. It's still early in the night, and we're still going to have
out a bunch of scenarios for you.
There are so many scenarios still to be played out here, but there is still a chance that we could see a 269-269 tie in which the House would have to break a vote. You'll see a lot of post-election litigation in that sense as well, but really could be interesting. So, we're playing out the scenarios here, right? Let's go ahead and just
Florida.
Florida probably going to go Trump. Texas, Trump's leading in polling there. That was. While it's becoming a purpler state, it was going to be tough for the Democrats to swing that here in 2020. So let's just say Donald Trump gets that. The gap is narrowing. The gap is narrowing. The president probably going to win Ohio too, likely, as polls indicate right now, early polls.
Right there, you've completely changed the dynamic.
You've changed the dynamic of the race. And now it comes down to what? It comes down to the swing states we've long talked about. The Rust Belt, Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina, and then Maine's congressional districts up here, which could play a role as well. This is what we could be looking at, ladies and gentlemen, and why we've told you we might not know the results of the presidency tonight, and it's okay.
That is entirely okay. That means we are counting. We are waiting. It is fine.
That means the democratic process is working. It's working. If we have to wait for results. Remember, 4 years ago, we didn't find out till 2:30 in the morning about who won the presidency. And Wisconsin was the tipping state for Donald Trump. There's 9 counties in Pennsylvania. Now, they're smaller counties, but there's 9 counties in Pennsylvania that won't be counting mail ballots until tomorrow. As we saw from the mail ballot, and again, this was prior to entering today, voted by mail, heavily Democratic in Florida, heavily Democratic across the country. So, that's kind of what we could be looking at here. But really going to be interesting to see what happens. It could come down to Pennsylvania, which is why you saw those campaigns there so many times in the final days.
And the dynamic of Pennsylvania is really interesting. When you look at the southern part of the state, and you look at some of the working class, the rural areas that you had talked